I'm sure most of you have noticed that Nintendo has some of the best gaming franchises out of all of gaming, yet, for some reason, they'll make a couple entries in the series and then just be like, oh, well, we don't need this anymore. And I don't really know why that is, because it seems like they're just losing money when they could be selling a lot of things to people who really want them. But out of everything Nintendo has ever shelved and tried to ignore, I don't think anything has as much potential as the Pikmin series. Hello everybody, I'm Garrulous64, and the Pikmin series is something I hold very close to my heart, and I kinda wish Nintendo would do the same. I mean, for a while it seemed like they did care a lot about Pikmin, because even if you haven't seen the games themselves, you've seen these guys in places like Super Smash Bros., or, you know, transferring data between 3DS consoles or from the Wii to the Wii U. Slight tangent already, remember when Nintendo's UI design actually had, like, creativity to it, and now we just kinda have the Switch that, you know, is completely soundless and themeless and lifeless? Just throw some Pikmin in there or something, please, like, I'm begging you. Back on point, Miyamoto and Nintendo seemed really proud of these little dudes for a while, and for good reason. I think these are some of the best puzzle games in the universe, maybe even the multiverse. Full stop. Seeing how much people enjoy these things and how much Nintendo seemed to like them, I don't really get why they had such huge stretches of time in between each entry and now are relegated to just spin-offs and mobile games. I mean, hell, the series has been out since 2001 and there are only that many games to work with. Actually, there aren't even that many games. I don't know why that's there. That's just cruel. Why would someone do that? So for today's video, I thought it might be fun to go back through the entire series, minus that fake one that doesn't exist, of course, and try and figure out why this game series might be as sporadic as it is. And truthfully, I kind of just wanted to play them all again back to back because they are fantastic puzzle games. And while most puzzle games usually make my brain feel like it's leaking out of my ears, these kind of make me feel like a god amongst men. Also, I've got you here, maybe you could like click subscribe and the bell icon, like the video, comment, even maybe click the join button below the video if you want to help me keep eating, because just like the creatures of PNF 404, I am constantly starving. Our story begins in September of 2001 with the launch of Nintendo's most beautiful console to date, the Nintendo GameCube. A month later, Japan would get Miyamoto's newest creation, Pikmin, but the US would have to wait until December, and that is when 5-year-old Garrulous, I almost said my full name, and I don't know why. That's when 5-year-old Garrulous would start seeing commercials for a strange new game called Pikmin, and like any tiny idiot child with just enough brain function to recognize perfection, I knew I had to have it. So I did what any sensible little child would do, and waited till Christmas and put all of my Christmas eggs in one basket. It was the year of Pikmin, baby. I didn't need anything else. With the game finally in my possession, I booted it up and I didn't look back. I've been a Pikmin fan pretty much my entire life. Pikmin is a strategy action puzzle game that stars a character named Captain Olimar, who is a spaceman who gets stranded on an alien planet on his way home from vacation because his spaceship ends up getting a little too cozy with a stray meteorite. It was a little bit unfortunate of him to hit that meteor because there was literally nothing else in the area that he could have possibly crashed into. So that leads me to believe that either he's a horrible pilot, or that's it, he's probably just a horrible pilot. Eventually waking up on the planet's surface, Olimar looks at the corpse of his beloved SS Dolphin that is now stripped of almost all of its vital parts. Thankfully, in case of emergencies, his life support is able to be active for 30 days, but after that, he is going to stop breathing, which next to complete and total starvation is probably one of the worst ways to go. Especially because in his last moments he'll be laying on the ground dying, thinking about his wife and kids that he'll never see again, and they'll always wonder what happened to their father, and they won't know that he just never actually got his license and he stole that spaceship. This is my new personal canon. I don't know how else Olimar could afford this rocket. On the salary we're gonna find out about in Pikmin 2. I'm getting way ahead of myself though. This is Pikmin 1, not Pikmin 2, as much as I wish we were already in the sequel. With 30 parts, 30 days, Olimar has to collect all of that stuff, and he's not sure how he's gonna do it. Until he stumbles upon the only other thing in the clearing with him, which is lucky because there's a really sturdy cardboard box in the way that there's no way he could have, like, you know, chewed through himself or whatever. He cautiously approaches the onion-shaped object in the clearing, and it springs to life, landing on stilts and turning a very bright shade of red. Our very magnificent and intelligent captain elects to call this an onion. Seeing some of the names he comes up with other things later down the road, I'm really surprised he didn't call this, like, the seediferous stilt stand or something like that, but you know what? I can work with onion. I'm sure everything related to gameplay is probably better off having a very simple name. Plucking the single seed that emerged from the onion, Olimar is met with a strange red creature with a leaf atop its head. Seeing a resemblance to a brand of carrots on his home planet, he elects to name this little creature a Pikmin. Olimar calls the creature to his side with his whistle, and just like that, one of the greatest teams in gaming is formed. There is nothing that can break this bond. Aside from gigantic bloodthirsty creatures that want nothing more than to consume everything they see. Olimar is able to do a couple things with Pikmin at this point. Namely, you can call them with the B button, throw them with the A button, disband them with the X button, and then you can control their little movements with the C stick, and it plays a funky little melody that I really like. The main goal here is to either defeat enemies or collect pellets that can increase the Pikmin population, because you're going to want as many Pikmin as possible for this journey, because so many entities on the later named PNF 404 want nothing more than to remain in their spot in the food chain. Joke's on them though, because a battalion of 100 Pikmin at Olimar's side pretty much can trounce anything in the entire universe. I'm starting to think perhaps the Pikmin are here for a reason, because if they were spread amongst the stars, they'd probably consume all life. Olimar realizes pretty quickly that with enough Pikmin, he can pretty much accomplish any task. So with that in mind, he decides to have them carry the parts back to the SS Dolphin so he can eventually escape, while the Pikmin are able to multiply and defeat their foes as a result. See, it's much more of a symbiotic relationship than people give it credit for. I know it's the funny haha meme to say Olimar's just bossing these poor things around, but they get a lot out of this too. Though there isn't really too much to stop you from sacrificing hundreds of these guys to Poseidon, if you really want to, but like, what are you, some kind of monster? And more important than senseless violence, every time you kill a Pikmin, you're gonna have to spend time to get more, and you are constantly hemorrhaging time in this game. Each in-game day lasts about 15 minutes, so it's in your best interest to keep as many of these guys alive as possible, that way you don't have to spend time refilling the population. And unlike in real life, using your time wisely is very much encouraged. I know a lot of us probably haven't mastered the art of perfect time control yet. I know I haven't. I mean, this video is probably like 6 minutes long so far, and I've been recording for half an hour. It's because I keep doing funny, stupid skits in between that you never get to see. They're all for my friend Andrew, who's editing this. And you know, this isn't like The Sims, where you can make Sims that look like people you don't like, and then you can like throw them in the pool and take out the ladder. Like, why would you want to kill the Pikmin anyway? They're shaped like little friends. Granted, they are probably the dumbest creatures on the face of the planet, because their AI brains will constantly make them walk directly into immediate danger, like, you know, when they're carrying parts back, they could just walk by a whole bunch of vicious creatures instead of going a safer way. I'm gonna blame that on the fact that I think they always take the shortest route, not the safest route. Or maybe when you're running around with them, sometimes they'll just stop and start plucking at grass, like me when I used to play baseball when I was a little kid, because I could not give any less of a shit about what I was doing. Point is, they are stupid idiots, but they are my stupid idiots, and I want to protect them. They just don't make it very easy. I think that's actually my biggest complaint with Pikmin 1. The AI of the Pikmin is insufferable occasionally, and, the fact that it gets so many of them killed and it makes me feel bad. I'm a little bit too sympathetic sometimes, though some might say I'm without the sim part for feeling that way. Olimar will travel to 4 locations on PNF 404 his first time here. We have the impact site, which is the site of your impact. We have the Forest of Hope, the Forest Navel, Distant Spring, and the Final Trial, and that's 5. This just in, I can't actually count. Can't really blame me for that though, because Final Trial and Impact Site are very small, so there's technically only 3 major areas you'll visit. After your first day, you'll receive your first taste of the traditional gameplay loop in the Forest of Hope. That consists of going out into the wilderness, finding creatures to kill, spawning new Pikmin, breaking down walls, finding ship parts, bringing them back to the Dolphin, rinse, and repeat. Olimar also locates the yellow Pikmin here, which are able to be thrown higher than red Pikmin, and also are able to handle bomb rocks, which is both a blessing and a curse. Because in a huge twist, violent explosions are actually one of the Pikmin's greatest weaknesses. The main problem here, after experiencing games later in the series, is that there's no way to cycle through the Pikmin in your gang when you're running around. You need to stop, dismiss them, and then whistle at the ones that you want to take with you. And this is a problem if you have Bomb Rock Pikmin, because if you whistle Bomb Rock Pikmin, they will drop the bomb rocks and the fuse will start. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I lost a majority of my yellow Pikmin in this playthrough. I gotta tell you, the yellow Pikmin had a really rough time in this playthrough because of stuff like that, and just because of general tomfoolery with their AI wanting to just put down bomb rocks whenever they did certain things. I don't know what it is about those funky numbers and their tiny little AI brains, but they thought it was really funny to cause mass extinctions, like it was really getting under my skin. I know I've already given the vibe off, but I'm just going to say it out loud. the AI in this game is the most stressful part of the entire experience. And that makes it a little bit hard to recommend Pikmin 1 to new fans, because I think it can come off as really frustrating if you don't know what you're doing. And it's a shame, because Pikmin 1 is a really nice game with a good challenge to it, but the problem is, I like my challenging games to come from the scenarios I'm put in, not from, like, my little AI fellas dropping a bomb and atomizing 70% of my battalion. This will happen a lot, especially in Distant Spring and the Forest Naval, because there are a lot of bomb rock walls you need to knock down. But in Forest Naval this time around, I didn't even bother doing this until way later into my expeditions. I found it a lot easier to just let Pikmin take more time to go around things, rather than, you know, worry about bomb rocks again and again and again and again. Because in addition to bomb rocks blowing up everywhere, we also have in both of these locations Satan's right-hand man, destroyer of lives. If you've played Pikmin before, you know what a Wollywog is, and I'm sure it puts the fear of God in you just like it does me. Now typically I love frogs, they're one of my favorite animals, but this frog, it scares me. And I don't know if it was Nintendo's intention, but this thing is almost scarier than some of the boss fights in this game, because it can kill like the upwards of 20 plus Pikmin in one move if you're not careful. They'll jump up in the air, and if they land on any of your Pikmin, they're dead. Even if you've unlocked the blue Pikmin at this point, which can run around in the water, it won't help you at all, because these Wollywogs are in it to win it. In fact, I don't even kill them most of the time, because I'm too afraid to bring my battalion near them. I end up letting my Pikmin bring whatever they're bringing back to the ship, like, behind them, and then I'll attack them with Olimar and lure them out of the way, which I think is a pretty valid strategy, but, you know, it doesn't really satiate the bloodlust I have. They also put like 5 or 6 of these things in Distant Spring, and that means it's my own personal hell. By the time you hit Distant Spring, you're done receiving new types of Pikmin, so you can take on any challenge that the game throws at you. It then becomes mostly about rationing your time wisely so you can grab as many ship parts in one day as possible. When you ration out all your time perfectly, and you accomplish all the goals you set out to do, and you go and grab all the stray Pikmin before the day ends, and then when you're sitting there watching like the end of level cutscene because it's unskippable in this one, you kind of just sit back to yourself and be like, yeah man, I did just do that. I am the coolest person on the face of the planet. Like, I did cry like a little bitch when that Wollywog gave me the stink eye a second ago, but I grabbed 3 ship parts today. That's pretty good. I don't think there's another game that gives me the amount of satisfaction that this game does when you accomplish a plan you set out to do perfectly. It makes me feel like a Jimmy Neutron genius or something, except without the swollen head and Donkey Kong hair. If you manage to collect all 29 parts, which you can do well before day 20, if you're careful about it, you get access to the final trial, which is a small gauntlet of puzzles where you have to switch between yellow, blue, and red Pikmin to do various tasks. It's not very long, because at the end you break down a wall and you see 2 weird eye stalks jutting out of the sand, and moving too close to it will spawn the most terrifying beast you've seen so far, the Emperor Bulblax. Typically how this fight is supposed to go is you get Pikmin to carry the bomb rocks, and then you're supposed to let them drop the bomb rock so it hits his tongue, then his tongue will like hit him in the face and he'll get stunned for a while. But usually what happens with me is my yellow Pikmin get eaten and he gets stunned for a shorter amount of time, which you then throw the red Pikmin at him because they do the most damage, and you just whittle his health down until he is no more. But that, my friends, is not how my fight went, because I forgot he had this crazy jump attack where he jumped off screen, and then when he came back down, he sent 60 of my Pikmin to the Shadow Realm instantly. So yeah, don't be like me. Maybe have a little bit more foresight. Don't group them all up like that, because it was kind of like a walk of shame to go back to the onions to pull out more of the fellas I needed for this. Yeah, it didn't go well. There's also a bad end to this game, which is pretty famous, because if you don't get all, I think, 25 parts you need to leave, Olimar just dies. He just dies on the face of the planet, and that's it. In a show of solidarity for their leader, the Pikmin throw Olimar into the onion, and he becomes a Pikmin. And I gotta say, there aren't enough games out there that have a bad ending that's really, like, this bad. Like, that man is never gonna see his family again, and also he is, like, doomed to a life of photosynthesis now. It might be painful, we don't know. We can't ask plants about it, they won't answer us. Another series of pretty good bad endings, that sounds like an oxymoron, but believe me, I know what I'm talking about, is the Oddworld franchise. Because in those, you usually just get, like, your shit kicked in because technically you were a little shit during your playthrough, so you deserve it. More on that series later, though. I'm kind of surprised there's never been, like, a fan game or anything detailing, like, the chronicles of Olimar Pikmin. I feel like that would be a really neat idea because Maybe they could explore more of what happens on the nightlife of PNF 404. I'm sure there's some banging clubs around. And to be honest, it's not like the good ending really gets Olimar any closer to seeing his wife and kids because of what happens immediately after it. 3 years in the real world after Pikmin 1, Pikmin 2 hit the scene, and this is another game that I badgered my parents a lot to get me because it was Pikmin except again and even better in every single way. And there was a 2 after the title. That drove me wild. In-game, Pikmin 2 picks up right where Pikmin 1 left off. Olimar is able to return home after getting help from the Pikmin to fix his ship. Upon landing, though, the president of Hocotate Freight tells Olimar that they are in extreme debt because another Hocotate Freight employee, Louis, had lost a full shipment of golden Pikpik carrots to a ravenous space bunny, which is a thing I am positive exists. The president sheepishly mentions that he had to sell off Olimar's SS Dolphin that we just finished repairing to try and get the debt under control, which it doesn't at all, and then Olimar, in complete shock over how many Pikmin lives were lost to try and save this ship, drops the souvenir he brought back for his kids, and the nearby new Hocotate Freight ship tells us that it's worth 100 Pokos, to which the president says, "Oh my goodness, that's a full year's salary." Now something feels really off about that if a bottle cap can afford their entire salary. I think Olimar and Louis should probably start some kind of workers' union at this point. The president orders Olimar and Louis back to the planet that Olimar was just stranded on for almost 30 days without seeing his wife and kids, but he does get to take Louis with him. And I mean, what more could you really ask for? The two jump through space, and in a cute little nod to the first game, Olimar swerves around an oncoming meteor, showing that he will never let something that silly happen again. Psyche's still a ship pilot. With Olimar and Louis separated, the ship begins speaking and then doesn't stop doing that for the entire rest of the game. And it's at this point I realized, man, I sure do love cutscenes interrupting my gameplay every 6 seconds. At least you can skip most of them, because if you couldn't, I don't know if I'd be able to replay this game as much as I do. Okay, first order business, we gotta meet back up with Louis, because in this game, the main gimmick is we have 2 playable characters. By pressing the Y button pretty much anywhere in gameplay, you can switch between Olimar and Louis, making multitasking a hell of a lot easier. You'd think maybe this would come with a co-op story mode, perhaps, but absolutely not. We're saving that for the 2020 release of Pikmin 3 Deluxe on the Switch. Thankfully, both Olimar and Louis land in close proximity to some red Pikmin who are just kind of milling around trying to kill some local wildlife. I guess they learned violence from Olimar last time he was here. And Louis ends up next to the onion, and I gotta just point this out right now. Every time Louis' eyes pop out of his head like a confused dog, that shit gets me every single time, and I've seen this I don't even know how many times. From here, it is business as usual. You build up the Pikmin population, you carry that Duracell brand AA battery back to the ship, and then take a rest for the night because every single one of Louis' bones is broken from falling 1,200 feet. He can walk it off, though. He's a champ. We will never get another video game that indulges in product placement like Pikmin 2, by the way. That shit looks so real that it looks like you could just, reach in there and grab it all Willy Wonka style. And I have to say, for some reason, collecting goofy little, remnants of humanity as treasure in this game is really compelling to me. As a kid, I was always really eager to see what we would find next because it's some off-the-wall stuff. It ranges from, crushed soda cans to a giant Princess Peach crown. And this also marks 2 Nintendo franchises now that have you exploring a post-apocalyptic version of the Earth, which would be Kirby, because he did it in Kirby 64, and Kirby in the Forgotten Land, and now Pikmin, because this is, absolutely Earth. There's, Nintendo stuff. It's not like Nintendo is from another planet or something, right? It took 3 years after the original, but now we are finally able to cycle through Pikmin as you're running around the world. So you go to throw, let's say, a red Pikmin, but you don't want that. You want a yellow Pikmin, so you press the D-pad and you can choose which you're gonna throw. If you're moving at the time, it makes it a little bit harder to just keep that consistent, but if you're standing still, you will consistently throw all the Pikmin of the same type before it transitions back to the other one. And seeing as how there are 5 types of Pikmin in this game, or technically 6, but one is exclusive to something we'll talk about later, this feature is very welcomed and one of the biggest reasons why I think Pikmin 2 is a massive improvement over Pikmin 1. In this game, we are introduced to purple Pikmin and white Pikmin, which are only available for purchase by throwing other Pikmin into colored candy pop buds underground. Purple Pikmin are so perfect and wonderful that when you throw them at an enemy, they basically home in and stun any creature they land on and do a lot more damage than any other Pikmin type. They also count as 10 Pikmin when carrying something, but as a trade-off, they are very slow to walk around. White Pikmin are incredibly quick and also have the ability to survive in poisonous environments. They can also dig up treasure they see underground and poison enemies if they are consumed, but that is something that I leave as a last-ditch effort or a complete accident, because getting more of these fellas is a little bit more difficult than the typical Pikmin. You see, if there were purple and white onions, this game would be even less balanced than it already is. Basically, the meta is get as many purple Pikmin as possible, and then nothing can harm you. So yeah, if you just like were able to harvest 100 of these guys immediately upon starting the game, you'd probably change the entire hierarchy of the planet in a matter of minutes. So as mentioned a second ago, the only way to obtain these Pikmin is to find the candy pop buds underground, and I believe they will only respawn after a day has passed. But that's okay, because in this game, there is no time limit whatsoever. Since, obviously, Olimar and Louie are here on purpose this time, they can stay for as long as they want. Which, I gotta be honest, removes a little bit of the tension for me. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but at the same time, it encourages exploration a whole lot more. And exploration is a lot more encouraged this time around because of one gimmick that I have alluded to already, the underground cave systems. Throughout all 4 areas of Pikmin 4, Throughout all 4 areas of Pikmin 2, Olimar and Louie can delve into underground caves through these entrances on the surface, and while they're inside these caves, no time in the day will pass at all. It's kind of like that shit in Interstellar where they leave the spaceship for an hour, and then like 20 years pass and like back inside, except no time passes at all, so it's not like that. These usually consist of 6 to 9 randomly generated floors full of treasure, enemies, and eventually boss battles. The main draw of these caves is of course the treasure, because you're trying to pay off the 10,000 Poco debt, and you'll be able to do that pretty quickly because once you realize where these caves are, you're able to like chain a couple of them together since no time passes outside while you're in them. So I guess it just kind of like comes down to how much you're willing to put up with in any given day. And I'm willing to put up with a lot, because sometimes in these caves you'll even stumble upon the secret 6th type of Pikmin, the Bulbmin. These are apparently a parasitic form of Pikmin that have possessed these dwarf bulb orbs, at least according to Olimar. I don't know how he knows this. I would like to honestly see what these look like at some point. That'd be fun. Or maybe they'd be really scary and they try to like crawl down your throat and command you like a Voltron or something. These little things are only ever found in caves, and they can't leave caves because they are incredibly overpowered. They're immune to every single element, and they can also carry things. They're just my special little guys, and I love them a lot, and I wish Nintendo would be like, hey, we're gonna put those in every game we ever make, because I would honestly love that. Doesn't even have to be Pikmin. Put them in Metroid, Samus game. I can't believe I literally almost called it Samus. That's the opposite of what people always do. People always call Samus Metroid because they don't know better. I do know better. I'm an idiot. At the end of caves, you'll usually find a boss creature that is nothing like the Emperor Bulblax, because every single encounter in this game is really easy thanks to purple Pikmin. And there are actually no boss fights that you can get into without purple Pikmin, because you meet purple Pikmin in the first ever cave you delve into. Each boss will drop an upgrade for Olimar and Louie's suits. These upgrades can range from elemental weaknesses being negated to something as overpowered as the Pluckaphone, which is something I don't have footage of, but you'll have to take my word for it. It basically just, if you whistle at a bunch of Pikmin in the ground, they just pop back up, and it saves a lot of time. This is something that wouldn't actually go on to reappear in Pikmin 3, and I was very sad about that, but, you know, it maybe was a little too overpowered, and there are a lot more improvements made in Pikmin 3 anyway, so maybe it didn't need it. Caves are my all-time favorite part of this game, though. I really enjoy, like, not being on the timer for a little while and just running around these landscapes and trying to figure out where the treasure is using the little treasure radar. They're also... This is gonna sound shitty, but they're also really, really easy, but that's not why I like them. There's this exploit you can do in the game where after every floor, the game saves progress in case you need to go somewhere, I guess, and I appreciate that, but it makes it so piss easy to be like, oh man, I just lost 5 Pikmin on that floor, reset, and then you do it again with all the foresight you just gained, and you just don't ever lose any Pikmin ever. And I didn't do that when I was playing for this playthrough, except one time where I was like jump scared by a cannon beetle and lost a shit ton of Pikmin. Other than that stuff, Pikmin 2 is pretty much the same gameplay-wise as Pikmin 1, aside from the lack of the day limit, which I do miss, because in the first game it felt really good to plan out your days perfectly and just try and see how fast you can complete the game. In Pikmin 2 it doesn't really matter if you like just barely don't get a treasure back to the ship, because you can just come back tomorrow and finish the task, and you really no penalty for it, aside from any self-imposed challenge you might have going, which I guess you could do. Once you're able to collect all 10,000 Pokos worth of debt, Olimar and Louie get in the ship and blast off back to Hocotate. Olimar looks back around at the planet that he's been on twice now and reminisces of his adventures with the Pikmin, before realizing that Louie is not actually in the ship. He is still on the planet's surface right as he jumps to light speed and flies away. Uh-oh! Yeah, Louie is just down on the surface of the planet all alone, being a tiny little man, and his eyes keep popping out of his head because he's probably terrified. I mean, what a character this guy is. He's gonna die. Meanwhile, Olimar gets back to Hocotate, and the president is like, yeah, we've made your ship into solid gold because I guess we have the money for that now. I see how they lost all the money in the first place. And he's also like, dude, there's more treasure there? Let's go back! And also, Louie, we should probably help him too. So in a weird twist, you actually start playing as Olimar and the President, looking for Louie back on PNF 404, which I always got a kick out of back when I was a kid. And if you thought the game was just cleaning up excess treasure after that, you are incredibly wrong and possibly an idiot. This actually opens up a brand new world for you to play in, and it's not some tiny little level. It's actually one of the bigger environments in the game, where there are more caves, more treasure, and the final dungeon called the Hole of Heroes, which I incorrectly remembered as having 100 levels. And that is not true, there are just 15. I'm very glad there are not 100, that would be way too many. At the bottom of this, we find the final boss. It is the Titan Dweevil, which is a gigantic spider creature with a lot of really scary weapons. And at the top, Louie is just kind of chilling. And you gotta save that man because he's in trouble, I think. I'm really biased about this game, guys. I would say that this is my favorite Pikmin game and probably the best one in the series because of all the advancements made from 1 and just how much I like the new mechanics and the cave explorations. I also have a lot of really good memories with this one. My friend Tyler and I, Bottled Water, you might know him from this channel, we used to play this game all the time. And I remember vividly this one time where we were in the Hole of Heroes dungeon, and we ended up getting to the Titan Dweevil fight for the first time, and we were blown away that we actually found Louie. But what happened was, this boss creature kills every single one of our Pikmin except for one white Pikmin, and we start chipping away at his health very, very, very slowly. And then, my parents called us because we were going to see a baseball game, so we paused the game, came back several hours later, and then actually won the fight with one white Pikmin. Then we had to do it again because we couldn't carry any of the treasures back to the ship, so the Titan Dweevil just got back up and did it again. We were able to save Louie though, and that's actually the win condition for the game. That's the true ending. You save Louie, and to this day we still don't know if he was directly controlling the Titan Dweevil or not in a fit of rage for being left behind. Now this is the part where I'm going to shill for Pikmin 2. If you play anything I talk about today, I would recommend Pikmin 2 a lot. It'd be a great starting point for this series, and if you really, really like it, I would say go back to Pikmin 1. And if possible, you should probably play the Pikmin 1 and 2 new play control versions of the games for the Nintendo Wii. These were released a little while back. I don't have footage of them because I don't have any way to record my Wii right now. But basically, they added motion controls, and I believe Pikmin 1 has some fixes to the AI. So that's probably the best way to play it currently. But hey, how about we have a 9-year hiatus in between Pikmin 2 and 3 in which some Pikmin media comes out, but not a whole lot. Including, there's this one little series you might have heard of, Super Smash Bros. When Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Wii rolled around, to my utter surprise and delight, Nintendo was like, hey, we love our funny little Captain Olimar man. Put him in the game. So Captain Olimar and the Pikmin feature pretty prominently in the game's story, and you can play as him. I don't know how many people actually like playing as Olimar because he is a little RNG heavy with what Pikmin he will pick up. And I think later in the series, they make it constant which ones show up one after the other, so it's a little bit more bearable. But as a kid, I enjoyed that he was there. I just didn't like playing as him very much because of how weird his moveset turned out being. I believe, though, that the meta of this game, and all of the Smash games following this, is still Purple Pikmin, just like Pikmin 2. So I guess Sakurai did a really good job translating the game's mechanics into Smash Bros. But yeah, Olimar will just, attack people with Pikmin all willy-nilly. You can throw them at people, and they die, and they die, and they die over and over again, just like in the games. I guess there's not a ton to say about this. I'm just really glad that there are stages and music and characters from Pikmin in the Smash Bros. Series, because they really deserve to be there. I just wish I liked them more. In the years leading to Pikmin 3, we also had another game on the Wii U that involved Pikmin in the form of Nintendo Land, a really fun minigame collection that had famous Nintendo franchises almost like a Nintendo theme park. That's a really good idea. They should do that. You had things like Mario Chase and the Zelda minigame that you needed the Wii Motion Plus for. There's Metroid, Luigi's Mansion, but there was also Pikmin Adventure, which sees you as your me donning a Captain Olimar outfit, and then the Pikmin also being random Miis for your system. This one is Rock Lee from Naruto, because my stepbrother really used to like Naruto, and Rock Lee had very me-esque features, so that was just a match made in heaven. And together with other players or just CPUs, you run through these little Pikmin-esque environments, defeating creatures, collecting nectar, and eventually fighting bosses at the end of each stage. It is a very, very watered-down Pikmin experience, but multiplayer Pikmin is always a treat in my mind. I know this isn't specifically, like the core Pikmin experience either, but it's something. I've been waiting like 8 years for Pikmin 3 at this point, so I was like, oh my god, yes, I will have another, thank you. And then finally, after 9 long years of waiting for Pikmin 3, one of the fabled third entries to a series finally released. At least Tetsuya Nomura had the decency, or maybe the gall, to release 100 Kingdom Hearts spin-offs on the way to Kingdom Hearts 3, so people could at least be slightly satiated. With Pikmin, Nintendo didn't really feel like doing that aside from the little cameos here and there and the mini-games to represent it in Nintendo Land. And 9 years is a really long time to wait, and I think Kingdom Hearts fans waited longer than 9 years for Kingdom Hearts 3, and that didn't turn out even half as good as Pikmin 3 on the Wii U did, baby. We don't need Mickey Mouse to fight our battles for us, we've got Rock Pikmin now. Since we have a 3 in the title, we are adding yet another playable character this time around, but Olimar and Louie are not in the player seat. Instead, we have Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, who are 3 characters who aren't even from the same planet as our previous friends. These 3 are from a planet called Kopai, and they're being sent out to PNF 404, which is a new planet they've discovered that has edible matter, because Kopai is experiencing a huge food shortage and it could lead to an extinction of their species. That's what we call a huge whoopsie. Another huge whoopsie also, on their way to the planet, they crash into a meteor and fall to Earth. This happens a little bit too often, guys. I think maybe we need to set up a neighborhood watch. That way these meteors stop playing God. We can't have this happen again. In a twist I didn't see coming, we actually start playing as Captain Charlie in this snowy tundra area. He stumbles upon some yellow Pikmin, and we learn how they control in this game. We have now done away with some of the controls like the C-Stick swarm attack in favor of locking onto things and then pressing a button to have all the Pikmin in your squad swarm something. This works a little bit better than the C-Stick swarm because you don't need to like until they all latch on to what you're trying to do. They just all get shit done immediately. You can still throw Pikmin, disband your team, switch between captains later, all of the same stuff, except this time the Pikmin AI is legendary. These guys follow behind you as close as Pikminly possible. I was gonna say humanly because that's just the saying, but none of the people in this scenario are human or even remotely close. This stops them from walking into water stupidly like in Pikmin 1 and 2, or going to pull grass on their own, or literally they will not do anything unless you tell them to. And they're also really smart and will avoid hazards, which I can appreciate. This doesn't, however, stop Charlie from stumbling into a dark cave and immediately getting slurped up by a giant glowing, I think it's called the Fozbat, the Fazbear Fozbat or something. We then jump over to Alf, who landed in the water, so therefore he is completely fine, ignoring the fact that, falling into water from a really high place, you would pretty much just feel like hitting concrete. Maybe this is all a coma dream, I don't know. Alf runs out into the clearing, finds his Copad communication device so he can track his ship, which has crashed nearby, and he meets, of course, the red Pikmin, who always show up when people fall out of the sky. It's almost like they know. It's at this point you probably realize I'm not playing the Wii U version of this because I didn't have my Wii U on hand to record. I preferred to play the Nintendo Switch release of it, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, because I had the Joy-Cons with me, and I wanted to use the gyro aiming. Playing Pikmin 3 Deluxe with the gyro controls, along with playing New Play Control Pikmin on the Wii, is probably the best way to experience these games, because you get precision for throwing Pikmin like you've never had with the GameCube controllers. And I mean it when I say this, you really need that precision for some things in this game, because you can get one-hit kills on certain enemies in the Pikmin series if you throw them in the right way. But with the GameCube control stick, it's, it's a toss-up as to whether they're going to go to the exact place you want them to, and I think that showed a lot in my footage of the first 2 games. Once Alf finds the SS Drake, he ends up going to another area the next day because he notices Brittany's signal is coming from there. Once we traverse the landscape and see some gigantic fruits all over the place, we find out that Brittany landed in this weird area behind a glass wall, and 2 things on this one. If she hit the ground like that, just in the dirt, I'm pretty sure she should have died. Because Alf landed in the water, Charlie landed in snow. I don't think she would have... But anyway, she's trapped behind a glass wall. How about you pick up a rock, dude? Break the wall down, you know? Don't throw glass stones if you live in a glass house. That's not the saying. But you know, that's exactly what we do. We stumble into a cave nearby, and we discover the newest members of our squad, the Rock Pikmin. We get 2 new Pikmin types in this game, one of which I will talk about later. Purple and white Pikmin do not return in the story mode because I think Nintendo realized that they were way too overpowered, so they are only found in the side modes now. And that's probably a good call too, because managing like 7 or 8 Pikmin types when you only have a cap of 100 Pikmin on the field at a time, it would start getting really frustrating trying to figure out how many you need to take of each, because, you know, with 5, you take 20 of each and then you're good. That, though, is why I'm pitching for Pikmin 4. We should be able to have 1,000 Pikmin on the field, and then my Switch will spontaneously combust within 4 seconds of this appearing on screen. Alf is able to save Brittany, and this is where we get our classic Pikmin 2 gameplay back, where we can switch back and forth between each captain, but there are some new gameplay mechanics that make it even better. Instead of having the captain simply follow you around all the time, you can actually throw them around to complete puzzles. Like, you throw Brittany up onto a ledge, then throw her some Pikmin, and then she can throw the Pikmin higher than you were able to because she's at a higher place. Morally and physically. Not only is this a cool new feature that expands the world for a bunch of new puzzles, we can also open the map and have a character go along a path we set to a different location than what we're at. So let's say I need Brittany to go back to the main base to go pick all the Pikmin that I'm spawning, and then come back to me because I'm going to fight something, or I need those Pikmin to complete a puzzle. She can run all the way back, automatically pluck those things, because that's what captains do in this game, and then I have her run all the way back automatically while I complete other tasks. And that, my friends, is a feature I have no idea how I lived without in the past 2 games. Especially since I've gone back and played them and still had fun. They're still designed fine, you know, and sometimes I do miss the 1 captain gameplay of Pikmin 1, but having 3 captains eventually in Pikmin 3, you can just do so much if you pay attention to the map function. Like, I think off camera, I was able to collect upwards of 9 fruit in 1 day. And reminder, I haven't played this game since it came out in 2013. So that speaks to how versatile all of these new mechanics can be. Also, it's come to my attention that I said cave earlier and I didn't mention this. The caves in Pikmin 3, if you ever happen upon them, which you do, are not caves like in Pikmin 2. Those are unfortunately no longer in the game. And that does sadden me, and that means all of the boss fights now take place back above ground on the time limit, which is endlessly stressful, but I think these are some of the best bosses we've had in the series so far. Pikmin 1, the bosses were very difficult to defeat because maybe it was your first time seeing them, right? Like, you don't know how to defeat Beady Longlegs, and you probably get a lot of Pikmin killed, and it's frustrating, and Emperor Bulblax can eat shit. I hate that boss fight. Pikmin 2, everything is piss easy, because Pikmin Purple, yeah, whatever, they're, like, overpowered, so you can just plow through whatever you want. Pikmin 3, you actually have to follow these things' patterns pretty well, or else they're gonna scoop up and kill a lot of your Pikmin. But at the same time, despite the fact that all these bosses are, like, massive compared to you, there are a lot of things in place to ensure that you don't just get, like, womboed to death instantly. For instance, we have the Quaggled Mireclops in one of the later fights. It's this gigantic thing that is like, it's like almost Lovecraftian huge compared to our main characters. But we still kick it and knock it over. This thing's stomping around with its giant cloved feet, and you'd think that means it's gonna crush a lot of your Pikmin really quickly, but since we're fighting in like this like swampy area, when it crushes the ground, it actually ends up making puddles. So when it crushes your Pikmin, they fall in the puddle usually. I think you can still crush Pikmin, but it's a lot rarer. Then you can whistle them out of the puddle and continue the fight like, you know, you didn't just get decimated. So this game is a glorious design upgrade from Pikmin 2, which is a game I already liked a lot, and playing this game again, for some reason I remembered it being underwhelming, but hey, I was wrong. It's a really, really good game that I actually want to play again right now. Maybe even co-op because, you know, it comes with that on the Switch version. Since I don't think I'm missing out on any other gameplay stuff, we're gonna go back to plot now. Alpha and Brittany end up rescuing Charlie from the Fozbat, and they tell him that they're missing their cosmic drive key, which means they can't get home even if they want to. Apparently, through some logs they find throughout the world, there's this guy on the planet called Captain Olimar, we know him, who found it and thinks it's treasure. So we gotta find Olimar. That's when the gang gets a message from someone who they suspect to be Olimar, who is captured by this crazy bee creature called the Scornet Maestro. This is, of course, Louis. This is some dramatic irony, and we know that that's not Olimar, but they don't, and we can't tell them because they're not real. They go save Louis, and then they're like, okay, thank goodness we saved Captain Olimar. In the morning when he wakes up, he will tell us all of his secrets and let us go home. And actually what happens is Louis lands the ship early and steals all of their food and runs away. Because he is a f***ing villain. Like, there's no reason that he should have done that. Like, he's just a jerk for the sake of it. And this is actually a gameplay thing I forgot. Unlike in Pikmin 2, where there's no time limit, this game is more like Pikmin 1, where you have a day limit before you die. But that is set entirely by you, because when you collect fruit, the co-pilots, I don't even know, the co-pites, I think that's what they call themselves, they juice the fruit, and then they eat that and stay alive for another day. So you can only survive for as many days as how much juice you have. So it's really easy to build up like 30 plus bottles of juice, so you're pretty set. But Louis takes all of them, and that's what I admire about this game. It actually keeps you on your toes a lot more. Like, there are a lot more little story events that'll change gameplay like that. So you need to go out and try and find out where Louis is. But if you don't find him in time, you better make sure you brought back a couple fruits to the ship, because if you don't, you die there. Sorry. I don't like this mechanic quite as much as the original day limit, because it is very easy to just, like, get a massive quantity of juice and just not have to worry about it. But whatever, it doesn't matter. You save Louis from the Quaggled Mireclops, you see the old Hocotate ship off in the distance completely destroyed and inoperable, which is kind of sad, because the ship is, like, somewhat sentient in the second game. So yeah, I feel kind of bad about that. And then you take Louis, and he says, oh yeah, Olimar is at this gigantic oak tree over there. So we head off to the final level, the Formidable Oak. This area has no fruit to collect. It is just a boss encounter with the newest villain of the series, the Plasm Wraith. At the top of the tree, we find Olimar being taken care of by the Plasm Wraith, sort of like he's its child or something. And as you get closer, it disappears, and the Pikmin pick Olimar up, but they have no way to go. They don't know how to get back to the ship. This is because they can't just go back the way they came, because that would be too easy. So all of the three Copites have to go through the big tree, leading the Pikmin down to the Drake. But here's the kicker. The Plasm Wraith is not going to just let you take Olimar. Throughout this entire dungeon, you are tailed by this thing, and it is actually fairly intimidating, because you can't do anything about it. If it catches up to Olimar, it'll grab him, and then you need to destroy it so you can get him back. Otherwise, it'll retreat to the top of the tree again, and you'll have to start the day over. Thankfully, though, you don't need to do this dungeon all in one go, or else it would be an absolute miserable time. I believe you can do it in one go, but after the day rolls over, things that you did will still be done when you come back. That makes it a lot more fun for me, because I actually bumbled around for like 2 or 3 days trying to figure out how to do certain sections before I finally did it. And, want my piece of advice? I didn't talk about winged Pikmin. Okay, there's these things called winged Pikmin in this game. They're the 5th type of Pikmin, and you'll never guess what their special ability is. Yeah, they run really fast. These things have wings, they can go over water, and that makes them like cheese fuel for a lot of things. I use those like more than anything else, and that's why I was gonna say, use winged Pikmin in this encounter to carry Olimar, because he can go over water and stuff, and I just like that a lot more than the blue Pikmin. They don't really do too much in this game. Honestly, once you get winged Pikmin and rock Pikmin, there's not a whole lot of use for a lot of the others, I gotta say. Like, there's some balancing issues in this franchise that Nintendo maybe needs to think about if they make Pikmin 4 at any point in my lifespan. Sorry about that, very scatterbrained. But we get out of the Formidable Oak with Olimar in tow, but the Plasm Wraith grabs him again, and now there is a boss fight. This is actually one of the most interesting encounters in the series so far because this thing doesn't have a traditional health bar. It only takes damage due to lack of goo. What you do is you attack this thing and it drops little particles of goo and you gotta destroy those with the Pikmin, thus taking down chunks of its health more and more. As you do this though, it'll start to expel goo itself. That was the worst thing I've ever said. And this goo will turn into like hazards, so you need to use different types of Pikmin to destroy these things. And I remember hating this when I first played it. But I played it again on the Switch version, and I didn't have that much trouble. Like, it was actually very enjoyable because it was, like, very fast-paced. You had to think on your feet, or else you would be knocked off of them. And, like, I think a lot of my captains died over and over again in this fight, because this thing does a lot of damage, especially on harder difficulties. Thanks to the quick thinking of Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, Olimar is saved, reunited with Louie, and they get a ride back to Hocotate with the Copites. They then go back to their own home planet and they bring all the seeds they harvested and they are able to save their race from extinction due to starvation. Thank goodness. Now just, like, order some Space DoorDash next time, man. You're telling me they don't have that out there? Like, we have easy access to space travel in, like, a variety of different worlds, but nobody started, like, a space McDonald's? That's a big missed opportunity. And that's the main campaign of Pikmin 3. In Pikmin 3 Deluxe, we have some side stuff, like where we can play the prequel to Pikmin 3, with Olimar and Louie doing some challenge stages before Olimar gets captured by the Plasm Wraith. And then I believe new to Pikmin 3 Deluxe, we have an epilogue for Pikmin 3, where Louie and Olimar come back to the planet to fix the Hocotate ship, which kind of just made my heart very happy, because it's like, that ship was a part of my childhood. I like seeing it repaired and fixed, and unfortunately it doesn't talk or say anything, but I was kind of complaining about how much it talked earlier, so maybe that's a good thing. And that, my friends, is as close to Pikmin 4 as we've gotten in the last almost 10 years. Right now, at the time of recording this, it's been 9 years, the same amount of time in between Pikmin 2 and 3 that we've been waiting for Pikmin 4. And I'm not going to say the port counts, because it's just a port. You know, it's Pikmin 3 again. That's not like, we don't reset the timer now. We have not been without Pikmin content since then, though. We have also had, this is something I'm going to have to tell you to go watch for yourself, because I don't think I can show a ton of it. Nintendo might come and kill me. There is this thing Nintendo released on the 3DS eShop a while back called Pikmin Short Movies. These are now found on Nintendo's YouTube channel. You can find them here on YouTube for free, and they're basically just fun little adventures with Olimar and Pikmin just goofing around. I don't know what time they take place in the timeline, because it doesn't look like Pikmin 1, it doesn't look like Pikmin 2, and there's no appearance of Louie, Alf, Brittany, or Charlie. Or the President, for that matter. So it's probably just some non-canon little things showing the personality of the Pikmin and just broadening the appeal of the series, perhaps. But they're very fun little escapades. I really recommend you check those out. Here, of course, is the time where I need to talk about the game that came out 4 years after Pikmin 3 that I am really not a fan of. That would be Hey Pikmin. So, a spin-off game is something that I welcome for most series, but the thing I want from a spin-off of a series is them to take what makes that series special and turn it into something sort of new that goes along with whatever they're trying to do. So, like, for example, let's look at Crash Team Racing, okay? So, Crash Team Racing has a whole bunch of Crash Bandicoot flair to it. It's not just a random racing game. Like, you've got challenges where you need to hunt down all of the letters in the course or all of the boxes or whatever to find the gems and get the relics and time trials and all that stuff from Crash Bandicoot, and they shoved it into a racing game. So it's like, this is not a racing game with Crash Bandicoot, this is a Crash Bandicoot racing game. Or maybe here's a simpler one, we have Sonic R. Like, Sonic is a game about running around on foot and being really fast, so Sonic R was like, okay, we're gonna make a game where most of the characters run around on foot and are really fast, and they have finding the Chaos Emeralds and collecting rings to do all this fun stuff. That's a Sonic racing game. That's a really fun idea, transferring, you know, what we like about the series into a different genre. And I swear that both of my examples being racing games was just a coincidence. Those are just the first things that came to mind. Hey Pikmin is not a good spin-off of Pikmin. It does not do nearly the amount of Pikmin things that I was hoping it would do. Namely, Hey Pikmin is a 2D platformer made by Arzest. Arzest is a company that Nintendo hands off like smaller projects to every so often. such as Yoshi's New Island, which was also a huge stink bomb. And for Chibi Robo fans in the audience, you might remember this same thing kind of happening to your beloved little robot buddy as well. See, Nintendo handed over the Chibi Robo IP to Vanpool, who were responsible for co-making Paper Mario Sticker Star, so that's already a bit of a strike against them, to make a Chibi Robo 2D platformer, which I don't think anyone in the world actually liked. And then Nintendo was like, okay, well that's it for Chibi Robo because this didn't sell well. So that's what I was worried about with Pikmin, because this is a 2D platformer with almost like nothing good in it. It's like the most mid-game I've played since Sonic Forces. So what does it do that's Pikmin-like? Well, you are Captain Olimar, there are Pikmin in the game, you whistle Pikmin to your side, you can throw them at enemies and watch them just, you know, eviscerate unfinished model bird creatures whenever you want. But that's about it. You don't get to plan out your days and, like, pick all the types of Pikmin you want to take with you, or how many of each you want to take with you. You don't get to explore caves, you don't get to... You have, like, no agency in this game. This is a game that tells you what to do and when to do it, as opposed to, like, you making your own rules, which is what this series is about, in my opinion. You only have as much Pikmin as they allow you to have throughout the level. You can't spawn any new ones yourself. You just find a couple whenever the game wants you to. It is really uninteresting to me. You do, however, end up collecting treasure, which is kind of Pikmin-ish, but you're only on the planet again because, say it with me everybody, Olimar crashed into a meteor and then fell to Earth, and the fuel source for the SS Dolphin 2 is now all over the place. So you gotta collect it with the help of the Pikmin so Olimar can go home to see his wife and kids. I'm sorry, did we enter a time vortex or something? I don't know if this game is canon, actually, because Olimar's assignment at the end of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, the epilogue thing I mentioned, seems to imply that he goes home for a good amount of time. So either this is like way farther into the timeline, or Olimar really doesn't want to hang out with his family, and he's kind of full of shit. Like maybe like he just feels bad when he's dying on the planet, and he's like, I wish I could see my family one last time. But then when he goes home, he's like, okay, well, I mean, you know, now I can just go back whenever I want, so it's okay. I'll just go back again. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying Olimar's a terrible person. I'm saying this game sort of implies it. I don't even know what to say about this very much, because I played about 4 levels of it before I literally just couldn't play anymore. It's not like a bad video game. Like, it functions perfectly fine, it exists, and you can buy it if you want for $40, which I don't think it's worth, but it's just so inoffensive and boring that, like, I have practically nothing to say other than that. Like, it's just something that I did not enjoy, and I don't see a whole lot of other Pikmin fans ever enjoying. So, why make a spin-off of a series if it's not going to appeal to the people who like the series? I'm sure there are some people out there that like this game, and that's fine. I don't know. It's like, even if I look at it as its own game, it's still just there. Like, I think one of the worst things a game can be is boring. Because there's nothing to say. Like, it's just, that's boring, that's it. If something's bad, I can list all the reasons for you. If it's something's really good, I've been talking about that for the whole video. I love this series, but this game is just, it is so just sitting there that I have nothing to say. And I feel like I should just move on at this point, because I'm gonna keep repeating myself. Try it, don't try it, I don't care. Following that, we have the most recent entry to the Pikmin series, which is a mobile game called Pikmin Bloom, and I'm not going to be showing you my own footage of this because it is basically a Pokemon Go style game, except the problem with that is there are about 6 types of Pikmin that Nintendo will acknowledge. Maybe like 7 or 8, actually, now that I try counting again. And there are about 900 Pokemon. So the variety is not really there for Pikmin. What you do is you walk around all over the place, you can find new Pikmin sprouts, and then when you walk more, I was gonna say they hatch, but I guess they sprout into new Pikmin that can have different little, like, physical characteristics, like hats and jewelry and stuff like that. You can name them all. None of them ever die because there's no enemies to fight, which is very unlike the regular games. And what it is, it's basically just a little walking aid to encourage people to get out there and move, and I did go out a lot when this came out, because I did have fun planting flowers and finding new Pikmin and building up the little battalion. But it wore off really quickly. Like, there's not really too much going on with it. I think it released with pretty much as much content as it could ever have, unless they start teasing Pikmin 4 stuff in that, because I mean, I guess that's a possibility, and if they ever do that, you come back to this video and you tell me. But yeah, I guess I'm just showing trailer footage from the game in the background, because I don't feel like getting doxxed by Pokemon Bloom, you know. Some crazy people probably triangulate my position just by looking at the shitty little map and show up to my house and cut me into tiny pieces and store me in their Coca-Cola brand mini fridge, and I'm just not emotionally ready for that right now. The game's free, so play it, I guess. Like, if you like going for walks, if you like Pokemon Go, you'll probably like Pikmin Bloom. I almost said Pikmin Go, because it's the same thing, pretty much. But I don't know. If you got a dog to walk, throw the game on. You'll earn some Pikmin while you're walking around. If you just like walking with your friends, I would say plant flowers at your local mall. Do whatever you want. It's a very current game. We don't know how long it's going to last, because Nintendo is not great with keeping up support for their mobile games. Like, once they're done with them because they flop, like Dr. Mario World, they just cut those suckers off and you're just never able to play them again. So love it while you got it. That's the advice I'm going to give. And that's everything I wanted to talk about for the Pikmin franchise for now. We are currently in not really a drought of Pikmin content, because 2 years ago we got Pikmin 3 Deluxe, which is actually really stellar, and I think a lot of people played. And then we have Pikmin Bloom, which is Nintendo, I think, trying to bring more casual awareness to this franchise for maybe a possible sequel in, you know, the next 40 years. Because, I mean, after all, Pikmin 4 is very close to completion as of 2015. Thank you, Miyamoto. I am in excruciating pain. I guess if you're really looking for new Pikmin content, you can go check out some of the mods that are out there. There are a lot of mods for Pikmin 2 currently, such as this one I was able to get my hands on, where it adds a purple and white onion to Pikmin 2, meaning you are unstoppable forever. There's a Pikmin 2 co-op thing that can have up to 4 players, which is way overkill for Pikmin 2. There's this really big Pikmin 2 ROM hack being made right now called Pikmin 2 New Fortune, and it's going to have an entirely new story, new areas, new Pikmin types. You play as a new character alongside Olimar as well, and that's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to that a lot. There's also a really great Pikmin 2 ROM hack that's going to be creating the entirety of Pikmin 1 in Pikmin 2's, like, superior engine. And that's probably going to be one of the best ways to play Pikmin 1, aside from, like, new play control. So definitely follow Pikhacker for that, and I'll put the rest of the people that I mentioned in the description as well, so you can look into those things. Pikmin 3, I believe, also has some ROM hacks, but I don't, like, mess with those as much, because I have no idea how to mod things on the Wii U emulator, and I don't use my Wii U anymore. So those are things you're gonna have to look into yourself, but I've seen things out there. Like, there's a mod that can, like, replace Alf, Brittany, and Charlie with Olimar, Louie, and the President. And if I was gonna play this game again, like, in the near future, I would probably use that, because I love those guys so much. But I think I am all tuckered out from talking about Pikmin for now. I really hope you enjoyed this little look back at all of the Pikmin games and various Pikmin-esque media that I could get my hands on. This stuff is the stuff of legends, and it took me a long time to realize why Nintendo is not, like, going ham on this stuff, and it's the same reason they don't go ham on a lot of their properties. We don't see Golden Sun, we don't see F-Zero, we don't see Chibi Robo. It's because it wasn't making enough money. It's as simple as that. Pikmin 1 sold okay, right? Then Pikmin 2 sold worse. So that led to a 9-year hiatus, where Pikmin 3 sold only slightly better than Pikmin 2, according to this website I found. So, of course, everything's about money in this corporate world, because that's how it has to be. Money makes the world go round. But, you know, here we are, waiting for these games to come back, and we miss them a lot, and I don't blame you for being upset or, you know, angry at Nintendo for these things, but I'm gonna leave you with one piece of good news for the end of this video. If you look at the sales of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, it is actually the best-selling game in the entire franchise. So, with that only being 2 years ago, I'm thinking that Pikmin 4 might actually happen sooner rather than later. And if it does, you know I will be buying it day one, and will probably talk to you guys about it as soon as I can. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you end up trying out the Pikmin series for yourself. If you do, make sure you pick the right one for you. That was stupid. I'm so sorry. Goodbye. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the end of the video. This microphone is not real. If you made it this far into the video, that is really cool, and I'm glad that you made it this far, especially since this is a bit of a longer one than usual. If you did, please let me know down in the comments, because now you're in the secret club for making it all the way here. And if you like this video and you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, click the bell, follow my Twitter, and join the Discord to keep up with more Pikmin and other things that aren't Pikmin, because I do a lot of things. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to my current supporters, who are Chaotic Mercenary, Brady Hilkemeyer, Mimic, Noah Wizbios, Danny Lee Dauber, Minty, Ty Little Tech Guy, Jeremy, Dax, Crystal, PM13, Chaos, Dork in a Hat, Mega Traffic Cone, and on Patreon, we have Takayaki Chow, Noah Wizbios again, and John the Real Wawa Luigi. Thank you also to everyone who's supporting me in the $1 tiers over there. It really means a lot, and even $1 can build up over time. And if you would like to become a supporter yourself, please go ahead and click the join button below the video to check out all of the benefits you get, such as getting shoutouts at the end of these videos, and seeing a whole bunch of members-only content, which include bloopers and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you all next time.